All right, hey everybody. So this is Josh Bruce, and today we're actually going to be starting a new project. And I do want to kind of give some background as to why. So I am working on the Eightfold platform and redoing all the Eightfold websites, and I was kind of I was getting to the point of laying out this different types of data, right? So basically, events that we've spoken at, and then our featured practitioners area, and that sort of a thing. And I started thinking, well, we're going to start building models at some point, and but I'm still trying to play with this notion of let's stay away from the database for as long as we can. And also content should be stored outside of the database, right? So basically, a database becomes a meta database, right? And so basically, that's kind of where I was at. And as I was thinking about it, I was like, man, it it might actually be interesting to start playing around with schema.org with regard to building out what those models look like. So, for example, for the profiles that Jess and I have, we might have something like this, right? Because Jess and I are both people, and basically we can have sort of this schema that's already built out for us. Even if we don't use any of those properties, like the concept is at least there for us already. And so that led me to looking for a library that could do schema, which there is one by Spady, and Spady does make some really good stuff. I do appreciate their work and what they're trying to do in the open source space. And so I was looking at it, and I was like, "Wow, okay, well, this might be a thing." But there were a couple of areas where I thought I could actually do it differently, where it might make a little bit more sense for me. And I also read the known issues part, and basically they were running into multiple inheritance problems, where the spec says that certain things inherit from multiple places, and PHP only does single inheritance. And so that made me go into the code a little bit deeper, and I was just kind of like, wow, there's and some of this I don't think they've actually implemented it. They've just put the classes in there. Um, but you can see where they're going with this is basically, if I can find ones that are actually there, there we go. They're commenting all the code, which I'm sure just creates is only there really to create a static documentation site, and they're really just setting these properties on an array that's inside of this base type. And anyway, it just got me thinking, like, okay, maybe this isn't the actual solution for me, right? Like this isn't something that I'm going to do, and so that's why I decided, all right, well, let's go ahead and create another project and see if I can sort of implement it a little bit different, right? And in fact, I just now saw this. I might end up implementing it this way, right? Where it's just the call instead of having a bunch of pre-named things. And also, the way that I've seen to be able to implement multiple inheritance or a concept like multiple inheritance is actually to use traits. And so what our implementation will most likely look like is basically we'll have classes, but they're going to be empty, for the most part. They're going to be empty. Um, and, just like this class, for example. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. But I want to do it at least beginning as a separate series. So we're going to do PHP schema, and that's going to be public. We're going to initialize with the README. Go ahead and create the repository. Clone that to the desktop. PHP schema, yep. Gonna grab Finder and we're gonna pull PHP schema into Sublime Text. All right, so now we can actually get started. Let's take a look at one. Let's go ahead and grab the editor config. So PHP schema. Did that actually work? I don't think it did. Duplicate desktop schema. Oh, did I spell that wrong? Whew. You're supposed to tell me about these things. Settings, schema, rename, cool. Let's go ahead and delete that. Yep. Yep. And go back to GitHub. Remove that. And we're going to go ahead and reclone this. This folder contains files. Oh. So it did create the file for us, which is great that, it tried to do that. So now it's really bothering me. Yeah, remove folder from project. It was really bugging me that that was sticking around. All right, so drag PHP schema. So if you've been watching any of my other videos, you know that this sort of just happens sometimes. And basically what I end up doing is closing out most of the things and trying again. Where basically for whatever reason, Finder doesn't want me to drag things. So yeah, that's a thing. Okay, so we're going to grab the editor config from here. So duplicate schema instead of shoop. There it is. Let's go ahead and duplicate this as well to schema. And we're going to also duplicate the composer.json file to schema. And of course, like we learned in the other video, we're going to have to update all the names. So PHP unit cover, yep. Now schema will be in source. Schema tests will be in tests, right? So let's go ahead and create 2 new folders. Source and test, or rather tests. Okay, so there we go. So that's looking mighty fine. So I think we're good there. And now what we want to do is go to desktop PHP schema, and we're going to do composer install. And while that's doing its thing, I will kind of talk a little bit about schema and what it's all about. So the idea with schema is that, and a lot of people use it for SEO, that's actually not my interest, to be honest. But not that that's bad, by any stretch. But basically, it's something that started a while back, which was basically adding microdata to the website or to the web. So when search engines would search things, they could actually get an idea of not only what the content was from a sort of syntax perspective, like what it's saying, like what the words are, but it could actually get a little bit more abstract about it. And we started with something called microdata. So see item scope, item type, and this is an invoice, right? And so a search engine would be able to tell, okay, so this is an invoice, and I know it's going to have or should have these types of properties to it. And then the first thing, the item prop is description, and here's a description of the invoice. The broker is item scope and item type, a local business. So now we're starting to describe this local business, and then we switch from being a local business to talking about a person, which is Jane Doe, right? Like it can start, the search engines can start getting a better feel for what things are actually on the site itself. I never was a big fan of microdata, and from what I understand, the RDFA standard is a little bit more it's a little bit more stable. There we go. Than it used to be. So you can basically say property, description, and vocab. We're using the schema.org vocabulary, and this is going to be an invoice, and this property description, right? The broker is type of local business. So we're still within that invoice object, and we're just going down the tree. And then, so this is putting it into the HTML itself. One of the other things that you can do apparently is this thing called JSON LD, where you basically build out this JSON object and just put that script into your page somewhere. So for me in particular, I actually prefer putting it into the HTML itself, where each one of these things can be described. And I know some people have talked about that in certain implementations there might be boxes or certain things, but I'm willing to deal with that as well. So there we go. We are all set up with the package. So let's go ahead and do an initial commit of this thing. And I'm going to go ahead and push it. All right. So what are we going to, like, from an architectural perspective, what's our MO here? What should we do? And luckily, we can kind of just start with thing, right? So if you look at the root types, right, you have thing, and then if you come all the way down here to the data types, you basically have Boolean, data type, date, date time, number, text, and time, right? So those would, I think, become sort of the root objects, if you will. But we're not going to make them root objects. We're actually going to make them root traits. So since we're going to start with person, I'm going to go ahead and actually start here. Okay. And I do want to have, like, if we look at the Spady implementation again, they have sort of an entry point, the graph and schema. And so I'm going to kind of follow suit, but I'm also going to follow suit with sort of what we're used to seeing elsewhere, right? So PHP shoop, we have shoop, the thing that's named, and then the other classes if you want to play with those directly. If we look at HTML, we just have this HTML here, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking for. So let's go ahead and make this class. I'm going to say new file, we'll say schema.php, and I'm going to say class schema, and this is basically a factory, and we're going to say namespace 8-fold schema. Right? And so now we should be able to get there. So now let's, oh, I need to copy some more things. PHP unit XML, so we're going to duplicate that, put that into schema. Yeah, I think that's all I needed. So let's see what we got. Base is any file inside of the test directory. I don't need these test suites anymore, so we'll get rid of those. And yeah, that's good stuff. Oh, maybe I could go ahead and take, yeah, let's go ahead and take this test here. Alright, so 8-fold schema test, PHP unit. Right now we're just going to do schema as far as what we're going to test against. Man, I haven't shot one of these TDD videos in a while. This is going to be interesting. Test, not nil. Funny enough, I just watched a talk from Kevlin Henney about, I mean, his was using Java, but basically talking about, like, why do you even test? Like, why would you why would you test the constructor? And that's actually a very, very valid point, because it goes back to that rule or that concept that we talked about when we were first starting this, and it was basically the notion of, don't test other people's code, and testing the constructor is essentially testing other people's code. So yeah, all right. So we're going to say public. This actually isn't the base type test. Let's go ahead and just rename this person test. So anyway, yeah, I did think that was a very pointed argument. So test is person. Alright, so now we're going to say person equals schema person, right? And at this point, right, if we're going really hardcore with TDD for a second, and normally in the beginning I do, if we're going really hardcore with this is a is technically, let me rewind. So basically the rules are, if we're following the rules as described by Uncle Bob Martin, you can't write production code until you have a failing test. You can only write enough of the failing test to make it fail, right? And not compiling is failing. So we have that, right? Even though there's not an assertion in here, right? We have enough code to make our tests fail, right? So let's go in here, and we're going to, and then you write enough production code to make the test pass. So static public function person, and I'm not going to put that there yet. And this should be enough, but there's no assertion, so we still have a warning there. So let's go ahead and close these other two out. Oh, and I'm going to rename this just to make sure we're consistent. Okay, and we're going to open this up here. Okay, so we've got enough to basically make it a warning because there's no assertion. And so now we're going to say this assert equals, and we're expecting it to be 8-fold schema person, and we're going to call get class person. And I think this is a comment thing, so let's go ahead and do this just in case. Right. So now let's run this again. No tests executed. Lies. Okay, what's happening now? Oh, forgot to put test at the end. There we go. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Oh, I guess we can do this too. Assert not null person. I'll just comment that out for now. Oh, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do the split pane, create, write. So, and that way we can make the tests a little bit smaller so you'll be able to read the code. Alright, so one failure because it is null. So now come in here to source, and I'm actually going to make a new folder, and I'm going to call it classes. And I think this is going to break one of the PSRs, but I'm kind of okay with that. Person.php. And we're going to say namespace 8-fold schema. Yeah, we should be fine there. Class person, and that's going to be it. So now we come here and we say use 8-fold schema person, and we're going to return new person. Really? I think it's because I think I'd have to run Composer again. So classes, no, let's do, instead of classes, let's just rename it to types, right? Because we're going to have one that says traits as well. So at least I think we will. So types person. All right. So that's not null. But that's not actually checking it's a person, that's just checking if it's not null. So let's check if it's actually a person class. Yep, okay. So now we have our person, we have our factory, we're doing okay. So now, how are we going to build this thing? Because, I mean, there's a lot going on here. And in some cases, it can take different types, because I am trying to make this strongly typed as much as we can. So, properties from person. Additional name. Let's start with that. Let's go with that. So we're going to have a private, and we're going to call it properties, and it's going to be an empty array for now. Okay. And what we want to be able to do, what do we want to do? Is there a name? Just name, like family name. Yeah, that works. Given name, the first name of a person. This can be used along with family name instead of the name property. So there is a name property somewhere, but I think it's in, yeah, so that's in thing, and basically I want to use what's in here. So we're going to say given name. So test person has given name. All right. So if we do something like person equals schema person, and we say given name, and I'm going to say Josh, right? And so that, yeah, and this is why we've got setters and getters, but I don't want to use set. Set isn't bad. And then I'm going to say name, I'm going to say person, given name, and I'm going to say this. Now, of course, I'm breaking stuff now, right? Like I'm breaking the rules, which is that because I'm writing a fair amount of code that can fail. So whoa, hate when that happens. Okay, so yep, given name, and that should be, so that should be fine. And basically it's going to fail. And if we come back up here, and this is why I'm not too strict about the write as little code as possible, because it's going to start breaking real fast on us. So let's go ahead and do tab, and we're going to do public function set given name. It's going to take a string, right? And this is not going to return anything, or no, it's going to return an instance of person. Yeah. So this properties given name equals name, and then I'm going to say public function given name, and that's going to return a string. And we're going to say return this properties given name. Oh, we're going to return this. Yay! Okay. So now what we're going to do next, in the next video, that is start to try to change this up a bit, right? Because if we had to basically do this over and over again, we'd be recreating the Spady implementation. Again, which is a fine implementation. I'm just trying to see if we can do something a little bit different. And so basically, I think what we're going to do is something like what Laravel does with underscore call, and yeah, so we'll do that next time. All right, as always, thank you so much for making the time. I definitely do appreciate it, and I'll see you around.